would want to be a designer, right, who is also involved in the business. So right now, you know, most designers do not have access or do not have the means to influence the business directly. I would want to be a person who, let's say, actually drives revenue, actually, makes into the P&L statements, right? That, based on this design, we made this much revenue. Based on this design, we made, you know, this much of profit. And that is the kind of designer I'd like to be in the future, adding value through design.
So, hello and welcome to HalfBiscuits. And as you know, we are always in for creative process, creative minds, and having a collaboration of all of them together. So, how do you get to a point wherein you get to design or create these kind of products or interfaces that people will love and enjoy? So, probably there are two conventional ways, wherein one could be wherein you find out what you love and you find someone who can teach it to you. Probably it'll be a school or a college. Other is an unconventional way, and our today's guest has taken that route. I think it is worth exploring for everyone कि वो कैसे किया इसने ये, right? And we will learn a lot from his journey. So let's dive right in. So today we have Vaibhav. Hey Vaibhav.
Hey Akhil. Hey Abdul. Nice to be here. Thank you.
So Vaibhav, can you just give a short description about yourself? What are you up to? Who are you?
Right. Okay. So hi, I'm Vaibhav. I'm Vaibhav Vardhan. I am a senior UX designer at ADP, and so basically I'm an artist, and I'm an artist by passion, engineer by degree, and a designer by profession. And these three aspects are really important to me, and right now, what I really like about design is, the way it lets me have an artistic expression and at the same time solve problems for people. And that is an intersection that I love exploring. And that is what I love about what I do right now.
I'm pretty sure कि both are interested in this. काफी सारे words है यहाँ पे, artist, engineer.
Right.
Let's have you first.
Yeah. So you did engineering, right? And at what point do you think that you can switch into design or you can make your career into design? So what was the point?
Right. So actually, that point came even before engineering. So like I said, I've been an artist for a while. So right from my childhood, I enjoyed drawing and painting, and since then, I always wanted to do a job that, lets me draw and paint stuff for a living. But then, that was my dream. And when I spoke to people, especially my parents, and, that is when they made me realize that, there is probably not much of a career that you can make out of, just painting and drawing. And that sort of, it disappointed me at that point because I thought, okay, this is what I love and ideally I should be doing this. But at the same time, that was also the stage where I, started really enjoying science and maths. And that is where, I was actually also interested in engineering. And even before getting into an engineering college, I actually wanted to pursue animation and something related to that creative field. But then, I how it goes, right? You, in India especially, you either become a doctor or an engineer first, and then you think of what to do next. And at that point, I went with the safe option, thinking that, let me just pursue this, and maybe, I can always practice art and other things on my own. And that is what got me into an engineering college. And once I got in there, it opened up a whole new world to me because, technically, yes, there's a lot of work that you can do as an engineer. But what attracted me is, the other stuff that happens in a college. So when you look at any engineering college, right, one thing that is popular among students is the cultural fest or the technical fest. And I was specifically interested in designing posters for them. So what I realized is throughout all these years, I have developed a sense of aesthetics, and I've developed a sense of, this looks good and this doesn't. And in engineering, I got to explore a whole new world around it, because poster design, that is, I was learning Photoshop back then, and it just opened up an infinite canvas, because I can put these skills into use digitally. And that is when I got into graphic design, and I realized, I sort of like this stuff, and maybe there is something out there that resonates with the kind of work that I like doing here. And after that, I completed my engineering, and in the fourth year, there were a few startups. Startups were started to bud around that time. This is 2014, 2015. So I basically applied at a startup, and they were looking for a print designer. So they were looking for a design intern. And I thought, okay, I'll just take a leap of faith, and I'll just apply based on my portfolio back then was just, the graphic designs that I had done, all the logos, all the different things that I've done, and just give this a try. And it worked out. And I basically got in as a design intern in that firm. And, after getting exposed to graphic design, I learned that there is an actual whole new world, because, there are so many fields related to design, and, what you can actually do. And, that subsequently led me to UX, but that's kind of a different story. So yeah, that is how I transitioned from being an engineer to a designer.
Great. Yeah, I think I have a very similar trajectory. I still remember, specifically, I think at the end of 12th standard, parents ask, right, कि मतलब अभी क्या करना है life में?
Yeah.
And I had an exact answer कि मुझे कुछ करना है animation में. ठीक है. And of course, my parents didn't know what animation is or what is the scope there. They just knew कि it's cartoons and something similar, right? So they were like, अरे कुछ scope नहीं है भाई उसमें. Don't do that. Don't waste your life in that. Even I ended up doing the same, path. Chalu kiya engineering, and somewhere midway I figured out, that this is not for me. I mean, probably I was a much more bad student than you, most likely. But yeah, I somewhere figured out that. But I'm assuming that you are at least, a good student, engineering mein, right? So for you to choose the design path, in spite of having spent 4 years in engineering, how did you convince your parents कि मुझे ये नहीं करना है, ये करना है?
Yeah. So I would consider myself maybe above average. So I just to clarify, I liked engineering. It's not like, it's something that I did out of force. I really liked science and maths. And, especially with engineering, I got introduced a lot more interesting topics. And I actually studied for GATE. And that was my main path back then. So I studied for GATE. And that was a time where I scored around rank of 1000 in my stream. And I basically had two options, either to pursue an MTech in what I had basically, spent almost 2 years at that point studying for, and this new field, new job that, not many people have heard of, something called a graphic design intern or design intern. And what really pushed me over the edge is, when I look back and reflected on my experiences, what I enjoy is artistic expression, right? So I enjoy giving it form to what my thoughts are, and form to, what my, emotions are at that point. And design and art to a great extent let me do that. And I said, all doing an MTech might be the most logical step right now, but at that point, my heart wanted to be at a job that, let me basically express and let me actually focus on creativity. And that is where I had to make that leap of faith. And it was a tough one, to be honest. My parents were not completely on board with, whatever I was doing, because I also had a software job. I was placed in the college. And especially given these circumstances, my parents are like, no, you worked so hard for during engineering, and now you're completely changing your stream. Then I said, just trust me on this. I think I'm onto something good, even though it might not seem reasonable right now. But if I do this enough, And now that I've seen people actually making a full-time career out of this, I just had to instill that confidence in them, and more importantly in myself, that this is something that I have to take a leap of faith in, and we'll see what happens next. So that was how that whole journey went.
So are they convinced now?
Yeah, they are. Especially now they tell people, like whenever people ask that, my son is a designer now, and he works at this company. So for a long time, at least for a couple of years initially, they were like, okay, he did engineering, he's doing something now. But now they're like, yeah, he's a designer, he's doing what he likes. And yeah, right now it looks good. Looks like they've accepted it finally.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so a question here. So I think the definition of design is different for different people, most likely, right? You mentioned something on the lines of self-expression and design, sort of a thing, right? So I don't know, maybe there are a lot of people listening here who may not know what UX design is. So can you just maybe explain in maybe 5-10 words, or explain like I'm a 5-year-old. Okay, what is UX design?
Right. So let's see. That's an interesting question. How do I explain it to a 5-year-old? Right. So okay. So I'm sure you use lifts, right? So in your apartment, you use a lift, and you want to go to the ground floor or the top floor. Now, what do you do there? Now you go in front of the lift, and you have to basically call the lift, right? And you have a certain goal, right? So let's say you want to go down and play with your friends. Now the lift and what you have in front of you, the buttons, right? Those are the interface, right? So that basically lets you tell that, I want to go down. So I'll press that down button. Now, once you press that down button, it now shows you that, the lift is on the 10th floor. It is coming towards you. And now let's say you're on 5th floor. Now you can see that, okay, the lift is now started from, 10th to 5th. And now you're going, and you can get on it, and then you can go to the ground floor. Now this whole thing, if you see, is an experience, right? Because you as a person, you want to go down, but you are reliant on another, let's say, a vehicle in this case. And that is the experience, right? So that whole experience is that, you want to use that vehicle to go wherever you want. And that basically is the user experience. So you click on the button, the lift comes down to your floor, you get on it, and then you go to your destination. So if you see user experience design, right? And I also covered UI in this, is basically, you have a problem, right? A user has a problem. How do you solve that problem? And how do you solve the problem using the constraints, right? And, being limited by the constraints. And how do you solve them for the user is what user experience design is.
Sure. So now, since you talked about UI as well and UX, so initially you started your career as a graphic designer. Then how did that shifted to the visual design or the UX? What was this journey like?
Right. So right after college, right? So I joined this firm where I was a graphic designer, and I basically designed for print. So I designed a couple of magazines and things for the social media. And basically what happened is I looked at other people in my firm who were actually designing things like websites for their different clients. Then I went to them and sort of try to understand, okay, what is this now? Because doing print design is one thing, but a website that is live, that people actually use. And at that time, more and more people started using websites and being reliant on web. And that is when I realized that, okay, print design is good. It's a great as an art form to start with as a design. But when I looked at what I want to do in the future is something on the web, right? So something that reaches, thousands and millions of people. And that is where I got motivated to, pursue web UX. I called it web design back then, but now it's, more classified and diversified. And that was basically the point where I realized that, hey, I want to do something along these lines. Now, the challenge back then was that, okay, I know what to do, but how do I learn this? Because, it's realizing what to do is just one step of the journey. And then I started looking at different tutorials. Okay, then I realized there is a UX, there's a term called UX, and there's a term called UI. And I did a bunch of courses on different platforms. But even then, it was just courses. I was not actually doing anything. It's like, okay, I know there is something called information architecture, there is something called this, but how does that apply to day-to-day job is something that I didn't realize. And that is when I came across this company called UX Reactor, which at that time was offering a unique job opportunity at that point. So it was unique in the sense that they would interview you just like how you would be interviewed in any other job, right? What they would interview you for is your attitude and your design aptitude at that point. And what's unique about them is once they interview you, they put you on a training. So they had a boot camp of their own, which lasted about 8 months. And once you go through that boot camp, that is when you can basically graduate and join their studio. So that was a very good opportunity for me back then, because I sort of get the best of both worlds, because it's like I could have done a course, right? Mm-hmm. But then this company UX Reactor, what they did is they offered a course that is so industry relevant, right? So it's built for the industry. It's not not something that is heavily academic, right? It's built for it. They teach you relevant skills that put you job ready from the day you graduate, right? So that was a very intense 8-month course that I went through, and people who designed it also are people who worked as principal designers at Yahoo and Citrix, and they put together a practical UX curriculum that teaches you things that you can start practicing from the day you graduate. So that was a good proposition for me. I made through that course in 8 months. It was really intense. Imagine, typically you take a 1-year course or a 1.5-year course, and you just compress it to 8 months or 7 months. It was really intense. So there were, it was really like military training. And I don't exaggerate when I say this, because, there were times where we wanted to give up, and I specifically wanted to give up, but it was so intense, and I just made through that. And then once I got through that course is when I finally started working as a visual designer. So
they had explained intense. When you say intense and you were about to give up, मतलब ऐसा क्या हो गया कि मतलब you felt like giving up?
Yeah. So I'll tell you about, right? So the course is what I made by intense, right? So if let's say you have an assignment, right, and let's say you have to decide a deadline, and let's say if you don't and you fail to meet that deadline, let's say you fail to deliver by that time, what happens is you have to discard the work that you've done so far. Mm-hmm. And then you're given even less time. So let's say initially if you were given 10 days, right, you have to discard all that work and you have to do the same project all over again in 8 days or 7 days. And that gets shorter and shorter. And the acceptance criteria was really strict. And that was what I meant by, intense. It's not like, okay, you do this assignment, you get the next assignment by default. And you have to demonstrate that, you actually have learned what was supposed to be done, and then you deliver. And in fact, there was a time where in my batch, right, all of us failed to submit our assignments on time, and we all had to literally scrap our assignments. So we had to destroy all the papers, all documents, everything, and whatever we worked on for the last 1.5 months, and we had to restart from scratch with lesser time. And that is what I meant by intensity. And actually this course is supposed to take 6 months, but I took, and my batchmates took, 8 months because of these, delays and these kinds of, let's say, setbacks that were there. And that is what sort of, there was a time when I felt like, giving up, because you see all that work that you put in getting scrapped, and you have to start from scratch, right?
Right.
And that was the what do you say, uh, uh, it builds, in hindsight, it builds a lot of mental fortitude, right? So it builds a strong sense of sticking to timelines, which is I think still a crucial skill for designers and non-designers equally. But yeah, that was the intense part that I experienced.
Right. So how did that experience help you in your current day-to-day job? Your entire, resilience that you had to build of, having to see your paper being dumped away, and you yourself have to, start building ground up.
Yeah.
How is that, helping you in your current job?
Yeah. So that actually puts in that discipline, right? So when you look at let's say in college or in the course that I was doing, right, that if I get delayed by 2-3 days, it's fine because it's it's just me, right? I am the only person doing that. But when you come to a job, right, when you work with, let's say, all these different stakeholders, right? Let's say if a design gets delayed by 3 days, right? Development gets delayed by 6 days because they get they just can't stay waiting for you to get your job done, right?
Right.
They'll pick up something else, and PO will pick up something else. And when you work in a environment which is so interconnected with each other, right, a small delay on your part actually cascades into a much larger delay, right, across different stakeholders. And that is one thing that I'm actually grateful for, because setting deadlines, setting expectations, right, it's not about setting very strict deadlines, it's about setting realistic expectations, right? So you set an expectation, yeah, by this time this will be done, and that basically helps everyone in your team plan better and do things better. And that adds a lot of value, no matter where you are, no matter how small or big the team is. Your ability to plan and your ability to give a reasonable estimate is what I think is one of the most crucial skills for a designer.
Right. So scaling from like graphics to visual and then UX as well. So
Right.
I hope you had a lot of mentors in between who guided you, who walked you through the route that you haven't seen previously. So what was that experience? I mean, was there any mentor for you?
Definitely, yes. A lot of mentors along the way wouldn't have been possible, of course, without them. Because especially when you consider this is about 8 years ago, right? So there wasn't much guidance, especially in India, because design was a term that was just coming about, because it sort of was, this industry is mature in maybe other countries, right? Like especially in the US, when you consider you have specific posts for different job roles. But when it came to India, and specifically, when I looked at my journey, there are a lot of missing pieces, right? Okay, what is UX, what is UI, what should I focus on, what is something that I do, and this honestly is not possible without mentorship of someone who has been in this industry for a really long time. And for me, luckily, I have had mentors like Prasad Kantamneni, Satyam Kantamneni, and also another mentor I'm really grateful to is someone called Shahid Hussain. And especially with Shahid Hussain, he's someone who has done visual design for almost 25 years now, and with him and what I really learned is how do you actually sell your designs, right? Because it's not enough to just make your design and expect people to adopt it, right? You have to sell your designs to all your stakeholders. That includes developers, your POs, your clients in that case. So I'm fortunate enough to have such people around me, and I was able to pick up things from them. And of course, it's also on the mentors, right? So they were also willing to guide, and that is a two-way relationship. And yeah, I can say I'm really fortunate to have such people to mentor me and guide me through this journey.
Right. So I would definitely want to come back to a mentorship to continue this topic. But when you said you want, as a designer, we sell the design. So can you just talk a little bit more about that? Like, how do you sell that design? I mean, like, who are those people to whom we sell? Because a lot of people doesn't know or may not be aware, like, what designers actually do, right?
Right. So when I say selling designs, it's not exactly related to how, let's say, someone would sell a digital product or someone who would sell, let's say, even a physical product, right? So what I really meant by selling design here is, you have to basically understand the other person and understand, what actually motivates them. So to give an example, right? So if I'm in a meeting with, let's say, a product owner and also a developer, right? And I, let's say, came up with a design for, one of the features. Now, typically what would happen, or what you think should happen is, I made this design. So, you have to implement it,
Right.
you just give it to the developer, they have to implement it, and you just check if they've done it or not. And then, that gets released. And while that sounds ideal, it's not something that can be done in a long run, or that's something that can be done in a sustainable fashion, because it's not like you are doing your job and passing on to someone. You have to basically understand, okay, instead of saying that this is the design, you work on it, you have to understand, okay, you have to sit with the developer and the PO. You have to understand, okay, what are the constraints right now, right? So from a PO point of view, how you sell to a PO is you tell them that, okay, as a PO, let's say if they are concerned about adoption, you understand that perspective and say that, okay, if we implement this feature, right, we can expect the adoption to increase in this way, because this feature lets them, for example, lets our users save 10 minutes in a day, right? And just by linking your design to a problem that these stakeholders are concerned about is how you basically sell your design, right? So instead of saying that this design looks great for me, you have to basically have to adopt it, right? You just say that, okay, from a PO perspective, yeah, this is great, it will help you improve your adoption. From a dev perspective, right, you sit down with them and understand, okay, so see, this feature can be built, and with developers, they usually tend to think in terms of story points and how much how much work is this actually, right? So instead you just sit down with them and try to understand what their constraints are. So if they say, okay, while this design is really good looking, but it does not fit with our existing code, then you, even though you are able to tell them to do it, they'll do it, but it doesn't build a relationship. It's just very short term. Instead, the way you can sell your design is by sitting with them, understanding their code, like what are their limitations, right? So if you, let's say, give them a feature that can be easily built, they'll be much more happy and more excited to build that feature. And instead of you saying from a higher authority perspective that this is something that has to be done. So that is what I meant by selling. In essence, it's understanding the other person, understanding what they are concerned about, and connecting your design and showing them that doing this will help you help address this problem in this way. So that's what I meant.
But then, don't you? I mean, why do we even need to sell? Right? Don't you think you are, so you as a designer is trying really hard to collaborate and empathize with the other person and so on? Wouldn't you feel that it's sort of a shared responsibility? Empathizing is not only one way, right? It's not that the designer only has to empathize with the other stakeholders, right? Why do we have to sell, and why don't they need to do the same thing? They meaning, I'm assuming the PM or the developers and so on.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a good question. So the way I look at it is, when we look at UX designers, we say that, okay, we are people who empathize and we have to come up with solutions and all that. And a big part about that is, how do you set an example, right? So instead of just expecting them to empathize with you, right, why don't we take the first step and show how it is done? And that's honestly how I look at it, because instead of saying, okay, we'll let him or let them adjust with my design, I'll just say, I'll put my first step and say that I'm willing to change this design based on different conditions or different constraints that you have. And that basically, it's like that usually leads to something called, people tend to mirror, right? So when you smile at someone, they tend to smile back in most cases, right? It's the same way when you extend that hand and say that, hey, I'm willing to help. And though it's a shared responsibility, you as a designer, because you know the value of empathy and you know the value of, doing design in the way it is supposed to be done. I think, we have to try from our end first, right? It may or may not work out. That's a secondary question. It also depends on the person. But I genuinely think that, we should try. And then there is definitely much better scope and chance for them to even, consider your feedback. And maybe in the future, they'll also see, especially in today's day and age, right? You can find information anywhere about any topic, whether it's YouTube, Wikipedia, you'll find it anywhere. There's an abundance of information. Maybe there's also an overabundance of information. But what a mentor specifically does is give you guidance based on your context, right? So if any advice or anything that you might find on the internet might not realistically apply to you and might not realistically apply to your skill set and where you are in your career and, where you want to go. And these are the things that only a mentor can help you, because they are the ones who can actually sit with you and understand, okay, you're here in your context, this advice makes more sense at this time. And that value, I don't think, you'll find it in any video, any textbook, anywhere, right? So that contextual help and when you need it is something that only a mentor can provide. And I think that's the value that they drive.
By the abundance of information, right? Like now, even if today if someone goes and Google like what is UX design and how to learn it, so there are a lot of content over there, but there is no two-way communication. Like what is my skills and how do I try to pick it up? So अगर किसी को ये जानना हो, तो again he has to go and appear and ask people. So that is where even if you understand things, but how to fit it in your context, and the two-way communication is something that definitely mentor can solve that problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yesterday I was listening to a podcast wherein they were saying कि always go for who, not how. Meaning कि if your question is what is UX design, कैसे करना है ये, apparently the who is more important. Whom can you learn it from, right? And not how do you learn it, right? And that's a very different. For the first time I heard that framework, and it made sense, right? So for example, if your goal is to become rich in life, Amir banna hai, you can get tons of books which says ki how to get rich and what to do and what behavior to have and what habits to have, right? But a better way might be to figure out who is earning well in your circles or in general, right? They can compress their entire 20-30 years of knowledge and give it to you in 10 minutes. That might be far more valuable. Even if you pay them for that time, that is more valuable than you buying any book apparently. So maybe that angle makes much more sense. So, Vaibhav, I also know you are, one of the guys in ADP, right? Why did you choose ADPList? Yeah, ADP and ADPList.
Yes.
So, why did you want to go into the path of becoming a mentor?
Right. Okay. So, like I said, I have been fortunate enough to have good mentors in my career, especially in the beginning of my career. And when I looked at, after going through that journey, right? So I've been a designer for almost 8 years now. And what I thought is, definitely there will be people, like me. So for example, if my perspective of doing mentorship is very simple, right? So I want to be that person whom, let's say my younger self would have wanted to talk to, right? So, let's say if, 10 years ago or 9 years ago, if I had some person who would guide me into design and say that, these are all the different things that you can do, that is the kind of person I want to be to someone else. And that is the main driver for me to, actually pick up mentorship. And another way that I look at it is, especially when it comes to beginners, any value that you add in their career, right, especially in the beginning of your career, right, gives them exponential, benefits, right? Because if they're, let's say, here, and the graph usually goes linearly upwards, right? But if you actually help someone, in the beginning of their career, they can, set themselves a little higher. Their trajectory is bound to go much higher than they previously could do on their own. And that is the kind of value I wanted to add to people, especially people who want to just know what design is, who are unsure, who are, like me, who did something else, some engineering, or people who also do, bachelor's in other degrees. And I just wanted to basically help them and get into the industry. And that is my perspective.
True, but then what is in it for you in this? Right? I mean, it's probably a very blunt question, right? So is it like a token of gratitude for the mentors that you had, or is it something else? Like, why are you doing this? I understand the angle of, the person you're able to get the person to one level to another level. I understand that bit, but how does that make you feel?
Right. So definitely, gratitude is one part, but that's not the primary reason why I do that. The main reason I do that is, when there's a saying, right? So when one person teaches, two persons learn, right? So when I look at how I can guide people when they reach out to me, is also a way for me to know what the trends are right now, and it also gives me an opportunity to look at the industry of, in the sense that it's not the same industry that was 9 or 8 years ago. And that's one part. The other part is definitely the satisfaction you get when you help people land their first job. And honestly, I've had this instance about 4 or 5 of my mentees who reached out to me saying that hey, you actually helped me get my first job, and I'm actually placed now in so and so company. Is something that I can't put words to how good it feels, because it's not just that you help that one person, right? Usually when you help one person find a job in the thing that they like, it actually affects an entire family, because now that one person and that one positive thing that you added in that person's life actually affects the people around him as well, right? Maybe people are dependent on him, and maybe just the fact that he's happy doing something that he wanted to adds value to more than one person. And I see that as a way to add exponential impact to to people's lives. And that is something that really drives me to pick up mentorship and to be out there.
Got it. So going on a different track. So I know that you have worked in a smaller company, like a small startup, and now you're working in ADP, right? So what is the major or stark differences you see in the work behavior, the culture like? What is your responsibility there? Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Right. Okay. So just to give you some context, in my previous org, so I was the first designer to join that startup, and in a way, I was the founding designer as well, because I laid down the stones and foundations to that product to actually exist right now. And with that journey taught me a lot of things, because starting from scratch, when there is literally no design system, nothing, right? So you have to start from the bare bones of setting up flow, setting up things, and to actually have a product that is currently being used by almost 50,000 students. So that journey was important, and was also also critical in my journey as a designer. And there my responsibilities were more about thinking both in terms of what we can do now with the constraints available right now, because in any startup, right, the most important constraint is actually the time, right? Because you have a lot of things to do, but how can you achieve the same number of things with the resources that you already have, and with the time frame that you already have? In fact, one experience that I can reflect on is just before COVID. We we built one set of things, and then COVID hit, and then we had to basically completely change our business and completely change our product, because no schools nobody anticipated COVID to this level. And that 4 or 5 months, of rethinking the entire product, right, from scratch, is something that I learned a lot from. Just understanding, okay, we cannot be too aspirational, right? We cannot aspire too much, and at the same time we cannot make it too basic, right? So that is where I had to sit down with the developers, work with them, collaborate with them more deeply, understand their framework, and based on their framework build the UX that we had to deliver. So that was one part of the journey that comes in a startup. Now, when it comes to a bigger org, right, like especially like in ADP, they're definitely more organized, definitely more mature in terms of UX maturity, right? So you have their own design system in place. You have your own different things that when it comes to even things like accessibility, they take accessibility very seriously, right? So this opened up a lot of different new things to me, right? So earlier, if I used to think that in one way, my whole mindset was around building things quick, building things more practical. Now it is more about how do we build more stable things? How do we build experience that reaches thousands of people, right? Even a small button that you make reaches thousands of people, and the scale is much more, right? So any small thing that you do has a much bigger impact, and that is what I am currently learning. That is, how do you create designs for such a diverse audience that spans across different countries, different places. So that's been an incredible journey so far.
Right. So, do you think, on a different track, do you think there are any stereotypes attached to being a self-taught designer versus being, from a conventional school, IIT, MITs, whatever? Do you think the industry discriminates you in some sense?
That's a tough question. I've come across both
yes, no.
I think, discrimination definitely is there. In fact, I've seen that directly written on job postings, right? Only people from certain, colleges are considered for this
institutions. Yeah.
For this post. That I think is discrimination at the highest level. But I think even beyond that, there definitely is discrimination. I can speak to that, and that again depends on the company as well. Definitely, some companies are more inclusive. They open their arms to designers who come from different teams. But then there definitely are companies that are more closed and they want to prefer hiring from certain institutes. So yeah, overall, I do think there is discrimination.
But do you think the companies are getting anything out of it though? Like, I understand them putting a criteria there. So for example, I've been trying to hire for my company, right? And we were earlier open to, any, self-taught or whatever it is. However, doesn't matter which college or, if you have learned from a college or from a school, even if you're self-taught, it doesn't matter. It just shows your portfolio. We will look at it and we will, see how to go forward. But over a period of time, it so happened that there are just tons of profiles and there is no way to really figure out or there's no efficient way to figure out or filter out people, right? So the schools become some sort of a filter from a hiring perspective, right? So yeah, I think I was just trying to give the other side of things. I mean, that's what it seems like to me. But do you think there is any quality difference or is it subjective?
Okay.
Like, for example, have you seen someone from NID or IITs who are, whose work is really bad or poor as compared to someone who's already self-taught and who should have probably given a better chance?
Okay.
Do you think that sort of a paradigm exists?
Yeah, so definitely is the short answer to that is subjective, right? And the reason I say that is even in my previous hiring experiences, right? So I have come across both extremes, like self-taught people who have actually nailed everything, every aspect of their portfolio and resume, everything, and they're great to talk to, great attitude. In fact, I was fortunate to work with some of those people. And there are also people who were from, let's say, these design backgrounds and design institutes who weren't, quite up to the mark. And honestly, I think while it helps me to filter, let's say if there is an institute on the resume, it helps me filter, okay, this person there's a better chance of him being good or him or she being good. But it definitely is subjective because I have seen both the extremes. And it's hard to conclude.
Right. But what's your opinion on this, Akhil? Because since you have hired several people that I'm aware of, so what's your experience in this?
I also personally don't think that degrees really matter. But I think from a hiring manager perspective or from a hiring perspective, it's just easier. Right? Like Weibo already mentioned, right? The chances of you being good is higher. So if I'm looking at 10 people, and if they're from a particular college, or let's say like an IIT or so, chances of them being good is like, let's say 8 on 10 or 7 on 10, right? Whereas if I'm trying to outsource, profiles from, let's say, whatever, Naukri and, random sites, right? It'll be like 2 on 10. And me as a hiring manager, definitely my priority is कि मुझे जल्दी से जल्दी vacancy भरना है.
सही है.
Right? So I want to hit as many good profile as possible. Right? From a quality perspective, it's very hard to say, right? Because there are people who have slogged their ass off and have directly learned on the job, which the kind of experience that is much more relevant than a theoretical or what you learn in school, right? And moreover, it so happens that what you learn in school may not actually translate to what actually happens on the job. Like for example, when I did my design studies, there was a lot of focus on research, contextual inquiry, a lot of hands-on going to people, talking to them and so on. And when you come to the industry, that sort of a thing does exist. It's not up to the mark that we would like it to be, right? It will also be about the scale thing as well. I mean, right now we are working in a mid-sized company, right? We are not a very established company, right? So maybe ADP, for example, has that like an entire user research team or so, maybe, right? But a company smaller size may not have that kind of a luxury, right? So I don't think being from a college really assures you anything like about the quality of your output. But I think what it basically assures is your starting package, I think. Right? Okay. And because your further increments are on your base, on your previous salary, at least in India, it so happens that you start off in a very good package and then you keep incrementally going up. So I think college is that foot in the door. Ki matlab, let's say whatever it is, 10 lakh per annum, I will hit that at least. If I'm a IIT pass out, I have my leg on that door at least. And then I can incrementally keep going forward. Because after that point, I think your degree won't matter as much. Then your work will matter and then so on.
Right. So one other question related to this, like once we hire graduate versus self-learned designer, now in terms of their career growth or maybe getting into that higher positions like senior or like lead or manager, what do you think? Who will have a right chances? I mean, over here, do you see degree playing a vital role or it's just the talent that they grown in during those years of experience that they were?
How do I put this? Definitely, I think it has some weightage. I wouldn't say it's ignored. So let's say if there are two candidates with same years of experience, but one has, let's say, a degree and another one doesn't, with same equal, like almost equal work, right? I think definitely there will be some points for the person with the degree, right? But at the same time, it won't be, at least what I think is it won't be that, just because you have a degree, you'll be promoted, right? Or, considered for these managerial positions. At the end, it's the work and more importantly, the relationships that you form. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it actually depends a lot on your manager, the sensibility of your manager, right? See, because if you're coming from a design college, there's already a perception ki matlab are tu to matlab vaas hai, right? Yeah. And I think that initial impression sets in, But if you are talented enough to carry on that impression and prove ki matlab you are worth it, I think if your manager is acknowledging that aspect of it, then I think then definitely it's easier to grow up the ladder, right? I've also seen cases wherein you might be a self-taught designer, right? And once you come in the industry, you are treated like you're always learning, right? No matter how hard you try to push the boundary, you might hear things like "तुझे और सीखना बाकी है." You're yet to learn more things, which may or may not be true, right? So I think that is sort of a con for people who are probably self-taught and not from a college.
Definitely.
Right. And also, if you look at the B schools, right, especially the disparity between people who walked out of B school and people who didn't go to B school, there's a huge difference in the pay range. So I'm assuming it is also following the same trends in design as well, because right now in India, there are very less schools who teaches design. In recent past, there were a couple of few popped up, but at a major, if you look at IITs and NID, NIFT, like those were the only colleges there who were, offering design education. But I think that is the same thing is going to happen in design as well, whatever is happening in B school as well.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable to assume at least.
Okay, let's maybe go on a different tangent now. So Vaibhav, what do you think designers are really good at?
What are they good at, or what are they supposed to be good at?
Realistically, on an average, let's say, what are they good at? Like, let's say, for example, if you put in, let's say if you're forming a team, right? Let's say if you have you're building a product, for example, right? So you would hire, let's say you hire a developer and a designer and a product guy, right? What would you expect out of the designer? What should this person be good at?
Okay. I think this might apply to all jobs, right? But I think most important thing here in this case is attitude, right? That attitude of, I'm willing to collaborate. I'm willing to, play with all these different stakeholders. And that I think is the most important thing.
So you're saying that the collaboration aspect, or a designer has to be collaborative. That's what you're saying as a...
Yeah, collaborative.
That's what they should be good at, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. So on the flip side, what do you think they suck at? Like big time.
Suck at.
And you can't say collaboration.
No, if a designer sucks at collaboration, then it doesn't sound good. So... What they suck at is probably, detaching themselves from the design that they have made, right? Because what designers tend to do, and I include myself in saying that if I made it, there's a sense of, I made it, there's some attachment. And, if this doesn't go through, there is a part of me that feels, okay, this is bad. This shouldn't have happened. But I think most designers, including me, have this thing of, being attached or too attached to their designs and their first solutions, especially. I thought of this, so this must be a cool idea. And,
So do you think that designers should be like gatekeepers of creativity in some sense?
No, I don't think so.
Or at least that's what they behave like.
Yeah. I get what you mean, right? So, the gatekeeping is something that happens actually, but that is where the attitude has to come in. That you're collaborative, right? Open to ideas. That's it. And I have seen this even in my career so far, that sometimes even the dev lead that I used to work with, he would give some amazing UX suggestions, right? Like even things that I have not thought about, and that is where you should take it in with open arms and not say that hey, you don't think of creative things, I will do that, or I'll decide that. So yeah, that is definitely there.
By the way, we call that engineering feedback UX, right? So we call it engineering UX. So at least in my friend circle, that is engineering UX, and whatever we give as a design, that's a design UX. So there's a clear differentiation that we have made.
That's interesting.
But yeah, but other issue that I think where we designers sucks at is we over empathize with the problem or the users. I think that is where we spend a lot of time. We don't try multiple iterations. We just try to see, okay, this is the problem, and then I came up with one iteration or two iterations. Okay, this is a solution could be. So I think over empathizing is also one of the key issues that we designers.
Yeah, that is something I agree with. I feel that in a lot of cases we treat users like they are something very delicate, right? ये करेंगे तो बुरा मान लेंगे, ये करेंगे तो रो लेंगे, ये करेंगे तो happy जाएंगे, right? And I think in most cases they don't really care. I don't think the users really care about how the design is. They must be caring, no doubt, right? But they figure out a way. Right? I still remember there's a time when in our company I did a small experiment. Okay? Twitter is not that famous back then, right? Only some people use Twitter. So I used Twitter and I found कि मतलब एक post है, I want to see उसका comments. Right? And I'm not able to find the comment section. Like, I'm not able to see people's comments here. How do I find it? I was struggling. Because when I click on the comment option, it is asking me to write a comment.
Okay.
Right? And I'm like, अरे ये नहीं करना है मुझे. I want to see people's comments. ठीक है? And I gave it to my wife, who was, from like engineering plus MBA background. Okay, she has she's not a designer per se. Right? Like, for example, I gave up. I was like, मतलब पता नहीं कैसे हो रहा है, but I can see comment icon, 57 comments दिख रहे हैं. I click on it, I'm getting a comment option, but not the list of comments.
Yeah.
What she did is, she just took the phone, she tapped 2-3 times. She basically just tried tapping on different things. उसको tap करने पे the entire comment section came in.
Okay.
Right? Okay. I was wondering, is it like an occupational sort of a problem for us? कि we are thinking कि मतलब अगर comment है और number है तो ये दबाने पे आना चाहिए. Whereas the actual normal user, they will figure out a way.
But यहाँ पे ये example में I think designer empathize ही नहीं किया ना यहाँ पे, तो at least he didn't even try it for once के ये क्या करेगा यहाँ पे, flow कैसे होगा, वो कहाँ पे click करेगा तो क्या आएगा, वो तो यहाँ पे empathize ही नहीं किया उसने. That's what I can see out of this example.
But I would assume that a company like Twitter will not think about that.
There are so many things. I mean,
so this is like before Elon Musk. It's not like Elon Musk is putting on statement कि you want button to be green or blue. ऐसा वाला UX तो होगा नहीं. I mean, I'm assuming they must have already had a good team in place. Right? I don't know why it happened or the way it happened, but it seems like the users are actually smarter than what we think, or they are very, very dumb and they'll just figure out a way. Right? They don't have to be empathize so much with maybe.
Right.
Okay, cool. So, Vaibhav, one crucial question. I think we made a previous section or a previous video wherein we're discussing about is India creative or not, right? And I think even in your discussion, many times you said कि अगर India में है तो you have to either become an engineer or a doctor. You also said कि India में इतना creativity है नहीं, and not creativity explicitly, but you said something on the lines of it wasn't so set up. It was 8-9 years back. Exactly. I needed mentors. I needed some YouTube tutorials and so on. Given the current state, 2023, do you think India is creative nation?
Definitely, yes. I think it is. But creativity, again, in different forms, that too. Because if you think of the word jugaad, right, that came from India, and even us in day-to-day lives, we have found a lot of jugaads in every possible walk of life, right? In that case, creativity definitely exists and it is abundant. And you can find it everywhere. You just have to, I think, observe.
Like, can you give me more examples though? Because I'm actually struggling to reason that India is creative. I get it. There are some examples, like let's say ISRO, and there will be some smaller tweaks. But I'm not able to see evidences wherein I can actually claim कि मतलब India में इतना creativity है. We are a creative nation. Do you think you can probably give us maybe a few examples, where you think कि मतलब ये तो हो रहा है तो मतलब India creative होना चाहिए?
When you just look at the diversity of all the different art forms in India, right? You see, no two states are the same, right? If creativity was actually an issue, then probably the entire nation would just have few art forms and just one or two types of paintings. But every state, in fact, maybe even every district, right? If you go, there's something different about each district in terms of the art forms that they practice. You can talk about sculptures, woodworking, and this is not just right now. It has been there historically, right from the Harappan civilization. Right from there, you have so many diverse diverse forms of arts, both performance arts and visual arts. So that considered, right, definitely it is there, right? I mean, all of this wouldn't have existed if people weren't creative, and that too, not few people. I'm talking about every state having its own art form means that people in that state, are creative, and that is the reason why it actually came into existence. So that's the reason why I think, India definitely is creative.
Got it. Okay, cool. I think I know we took up a lot of your time today. Maybe just last two questions, and then maybe we can wind up. So,
Sure.
What do you think are the career paths for a designer?
Okay. Multiple careers, right? So, right from on the highest level, you can think of being an individual contributor or a manager, right? That's the most highest, distinction that you can form, right? But within each of these, right? So there is your core interaction design, right? So which is all about how do you take requirements and make feasible solutions out of it. Then you have UX research, right? And again, these might get more niche, right, when you talk about UX research. And there is also prototyping. So what I mean by that is people who actually make these micro animations, right, micro interactions, right? So that can be a career path, and I know very few apps do that right now. And one notable example here is Cred, right? So if you look at the animations and their entire visual language, right, it's just out of the box, right? So that is one path. And then you have your all-rounders who are product designers, right, who do literally all of these things end to end, right? So that is one path. And
yeah, but these are all actually like diverging points from the same, let's say if I'm a designer right now, what you are explaining is what I could do from this point in time. I can go into the research phase, or I can go into a prototyping phase, or a motion design and so on.
Right.
But let's say for an individual who's starting his career right now and who is thinking about, like, let's say a 25-year career, what is the peak that I can reach? Or industry mein matlab kya hai? Like what is the highest level that I can probably be thinking of?
Okay, that way. To be fair, things can change a lot in 25 years, right? So that thing aside, assuming that things will stay the same, at least posts wise, job titles wise, I think the biggest thing that you can do is being at the highest level, reporting to your top leadership, right? So what I mean by that is having a seat at the table where as, let's say, being in the council of the C executives, right? The people we talk about, CFO, CEOs, CXOs, right? I think being a designer there is, I think, the epitome of of the design career that you can reach, because from that point, right, you have the highest possible impact that you can make in terms of design in your own company. So that is definitely what you can strive for.
So I have a question for both of you. Say that, give an advice to a newcomer in the industry who is self-taught designer, only in 4 steps. Okay?
Okay.
Akhil and Vaibhav, on 4 steps, just give me the feedback. If someone is coming into design, what 4 steps they should be following, or what are the 4 things they should be looking in? Vaibhav, you can start.
4 things. Okay. First thing is to know your why, right? Why do you want to be a designer, right? It's the simplest question.
Right.
It could be, the answer to that could be anything from, okay, right now it's the hot topic, everyone is being a designer, I want to make more money. Or it could be more personal and, in the sense that, no, I am someone I want to I am someone who wants to create things for people. So
Right.
first thing is why. Understand
Why.
your why. You don't have to tell that to people, right? Maybe note it down. Maybe just keep it with you. And
Okay.
second thing would be, okay, once you know the why, right? You look at what skills wise or knowledge wise, what are the things that I need to learn?
Okay.
And
Skills.
why skills. Third is definitely mentorship. Probably the most important, even though it's the third item here. Because there's an overabundance of information everywhere. You need someone who can guide you in your context, who can guide you
Right.
with your specific situation. And fourth one is kind of like shouldn't be attached, right? So don't be attached to your designs. So especially in the beginning, you will make things that are not as good as, let's say you look at a tutorial, you followed the exact steps, but the end product is still somehow worse than what you see on the screen, right? So don't be attached to that hey, I couldn't make this, I'm a bad designer, right? You are not. So don't be attached. Be more open to feedback, be more open to explore more. And those are my four things.
All right. Akhil.
So I think I largely agree to what Vaibhav said, but I think I probably will rephrase some of those things. Right? I think first of all you have to realize कि ये design जो path है मेरे लिए है कि नहीं. Right? And if you're getting in it for the money, you will most likely fail. Right? So for example, like Weibo or like me, we have we did the engineering, we went the engineering path. Right, and we figured out that we cannot really, or at least I figured out that I will not be a good engineer as such. That's my core learning from engineering, right? I need to find something I really like. And why it is important is that is the only thing that will keep you pushing forward, right? I knew that I wanted to know things. ये कैसे हो रहा है, क्या चल रहा है, why is this happening, and so on. So I think you have to first of all realize or understand why do you really want to get into design, right? There are tons of ways of making money. Right? If you think that design will give you money, probably may or may not be true for you. I've seen people who have come into design thinking it's more like an art form or more like a creative job, which there are some aspects of it, right? But largely when they start doing their studies, they realize कि मतलब end में मेरे को लगता है शायद से बक्सा ही बनाना है. I have to only make boxes, right? They feel very constrained and restricted. Right, and then they lose out their interest. They eventually do something else, right? So I think first of all, I think you have to realize why do you want to get into design, right? And once you have taken that path, then I think you have to just kill it. You have to find out who is doing great. Like I said before, right? Who, not how. Find out people who are doing great work, follow them, understand what they're doing differently, implement them in your designs. That is the second thing. Third thing is, I think you also need to somewhere prove the value of it. I don't think we are still in a stage wherein designers' value is really understood, right? If you look at the product team, most likely they think of designers as कि I have given the idea, बना डालो. It's like घर बना दिया, paint मार दो, right? That's the approach that is there right now, right? But I think you also somehow need to prove कि नहीं भाई, it's not as easy as this. I'm finding faults in these areas. Or if you do these things, it may not work out, right? So if your role doesn't exist, what are the gaps? What are the gaps you're actually filling? I think we will constantly have to sort of prove that point, right? And lastly, I think there are these three things. I think the fourth, I don't think there's the fourth, personally.
Masha. Good. Right. And like Vaibhav, you said mentorship, right? Now, if people who are listening to this episode, how can they reach you for mentorship?
Yeah. So I mentor on this platform called ADPList. You can add the links maybe wherever it's relevant, or you can just search for my name. I have some slots available where you can just book a session with me and get mentorship. And all of this is completely free, right? I do it on a pro bono basis.
Yay!
And
Free hai to aayenge.
yeah, so looking forward to hearing new perspectives, especially from young designers, right? The struggles that they go through and the confusions that they go through, and I really look forward to talking to them.
Awesome.
Okay, I think one last question from my side. This is more like a midlife crisis wala question. Okay, so who is Weibo gonna be in the next 10 years?
Okay. Okay. Interesting. So the way I see is I'd want to be a designer, right, who is also involved in the business. So right now, most designers do not have access or do not have the means to influence the business directly. I would want to be a person who, let's say, actually drives revenue, actually makes into the P&L statements, right? That, based on this design, we made this much revenue. Based on this design, we made, this much of profit. And that is the kind of designer I'd like to be in the future, adding value through design, adding value to business through design. So yeah.
Okay, so Vaibhav, thanks for joining us. It was fun topic to talk to. There's a lot of insights being shared across, right? And I hope the listeners and the people who are viewing this will learn a lot from this.
Yeah, likewise, I'm glad to be on HalfBiscuits, right? It was really interesting to answer some of the questions that you guys asked. So had a good time as well.
Yep. Okay then. Chalo.
Okay, thank you.